So hello and welcome to another live digital marketing workshop brought to you by your friends at MintTwist, the digital agency. You can find out more about us at minttwist.com. So this live marketing workshop is being streamed. It's being multi-streamed to a number of channels and a number of profiles, and in order to do that we use the Restream software. You can find out more about them in the links below as well. So my name is Elliott King and I want to speak with you today. I want to help you to learn more about how to launch your marketing videos. So by launch we mean get them up onto the channels that we want to place them on and we want to ultimately to promote them on, and how we can do that in a manner that's going to help us give them the best chance of succeeding from a marketing perspective. So this episode is actually the last in a mini series of episodes of workshops talking about how to start video marketing. This is part 5 of 5. So if you haven't seen the first 4, please stay and watch this one, of course, but I would recommend you check out those first 4, and you'll find links to those videos in the descriptions here. So as we mentioned, this is a digital marketing workshop. So this is mostly focused at marketers, comms people, managers, business owners, students, anyone who's interested in using digital tools and techniques to improve their marketing. So everything we talk about today is going to be from a marketing perspective, but of course it's relevant to anyone really who's playing with video. So what will we learn today? So we're going to learn about how to use our platforms. So when we say platforms, we really mean the social media networks that we're going to place our video content on, and YouTube, for the purposes of today, we'll sort of clump that into the same bucket. And we'll talk about the 5 steps that we need to consider before launching our marketing video. And then we'll talk about a bit about repurposing. So video content is quite high investment, high time investment, potentially cost investment to plan it, to create it, to edit it. So we want to make sure that we get the most value from it, and repurposing is a great way, one great way to do that. So lots of people are going to be watching this live. So if you are watching it live, please, wherever you're watching it live, please do pop in the comments and let us know your name. If you feel like it, let us know where you're watching from. It's great to get some feedback going. Now, if you're watching on replay, and I think most people will be watching on replay, then please also let us know in the comments what you think of this video, what you think of this series. We really would love to get some feedback, and you'd be doing us a nice favor if you could do that. Thank you. So, know your platform. So wherever we place our content is going to drive quite significantly how we structure that content, first of all, but how we launch it. So in part 2, we spoke about planning video, and in part 1, we spoke about video marketing strategy. So ideally, you would have quite a good idea about where you're going to place the content, or at least what your most important channels are, before you actually start planning and producing it. Because if we're going to create a production to go into something like an opera house, it's going to be a very different form of production to something that is going to go in, for example, Netflix or something like that. It's a different audience, there's different expectations. And it's exactly the same with the social media channels. So this is a cheat sheet here, and it sort of gives you the key things, the key differences between the channels in terms of the way that they expect their video to be formatted. So we won't go through all of them here, but the key ones: Facebook, for example, will expect square and vertical images. Instagram will definitely expect square and vertical images. It's not to say that you can't put landscape, but if you do, it's going to be out of kilter with the expectations of those audiences. Something like YouTube, is the other way around. The default is landscape content. Vertical content would probably render a bit weird. Mobile platform, the mobile applications of YouTube would do a bit better with it, but in general, the default format for YouTube is landscape. So for many of the social networks, if you want to create video to place on YouTube, but then to repurpose for the social networks, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and so on, which is quite normal for marketers, you would probably create a base landscape version of your content, and then during the editing process, you would create a square or possibly even a vertical version of that content. But what's important to know is, what's your most important platform, and then you plan and you produce for that platform and you repurpose for the others. In terms of view count, so when often for marketers, one of our KPIs for success of a video is how many views does it get. So again, here there's quite significant differences in the channels in terms of what they count as a view. So on Facebook, it's 3 seconds. On Twitter and Instagram, it's 3 seconds. And so this means that someone might only watch 5 seconds of your video, but a view is still counted. So it's not saying that's good or that's bad, but on a platform like YouTube, for example, the threshold is much, much higher. Unless your video gets at least 30 seconds of viewing from an individual user, that view is not counted by YouTube at all. LinkedIn, the threshold, it says not available, but best estimates or most widely agreed estimates are that it's about 15 seconds. So LinkedIn stands somewhere in between YouTube and most of the other social networks. Something else to consider on a platform like Twitter, you've got a very specific time limit. So 2 minutes and 20 seconds is the maximum. Anything longer than that, unless it's live streamed content, you can stream live content for longer than 2 minutes 20 seconds. But if you're uploading video to Twitter, it can't be longer than 2 minutes and 20 seconds. There's also a file size limit for Twitter that's relatively small. So you've got to be thinking about that when you're editing your content, if Twitter's a platform that's important for you. So social media video versus platform video. So, there's, as we're sort of alluding to here, there's a general difference between the social media networks, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn and others, to the kind of platforms, which is YouTube, Zoom. If you're creating podcasts, then the podcast hosts and even your own website. And the main difference, apart from formatting, which we've spoken about already, is the fact that if you go onto a platform like YouTube or like your website, it's more like a library of content that can be accessed by people over a long period of time. Now, what I mean by that is that we have a higher degree of control when it's a platform, even like YouTube, that we obviously don't directly control, because we can direct people to our content. We can direct people to our content directly, but they can also be directed to it via search. So we can optimize video for search on YouTube, and we can expect, if it's a type of video that's going to be ranked in search, we can expect it to get views many weeks or many months, and in many cases many years after we posted that video. Now, if we do post video to a social network like Facebook, like Instagram, and like Twitter, and to a lesser extent like LinkedIn, we can expect the shelf life of that video, meaning the period of time in which that video will be visible to other users on the platform will be very small. It will be days, possibly even hours. We don't get long on the traditional social networks. So how to approach it, it's clearly where is our audience, but there is a strong argument for creating content and posting it on a library platform area, and YouTube might be your base. You might be embedding it into your website, but then repurposing that content for relevant social channels does make sense. So you can have both. They don't need to be mutually exclusive. So video for social media, remember, let's summarize now, they're large and busy platforms, and it's an interruptive format. Social media, by its very nature, people are scrolling along just looking for something. They're not going to explicitly look for your particular piece of content. So when we create video, in particular video for those channels, we need something going on in the first 5 seconds. we at least need to get to the point very quickly, otherwise it's unlikely to cut through. So it's great for reach. If you look at the stats for video, if you're creating video content already, or if you have access to stats, what you'll see is the social media networks will give you a large amount of awareness, a large amount of reach, a large amount of views, but the viewers won't necessarily be particularly engaged. It's not to say that a subset won't be, it's just that the reach relative to the amount of total engagement, meaning total watch time, it's going to be skewed towards lots of people watching small elements of your video rather than lots of people watching large elements of your video. Posts have a half-life, of days or even hours, as we've said. So what's key with really anything in digital marketing, but especially with video, is having a look at the stats and just trying to dig a little bit deeper than the views alone. Most of the analytics that is available in the back ends of these platforms will allow you to look. Facebook will tell you the number of viewers who watched 3 seconds or more. It will tell you the number of viewers who watched 10 seconds or more. It will tell you the number of viewers who watched 1 minute or more, or 90% of your video. And as you would expect, it's a decreasing number at each of those points. So platform and video, as we said, if you're using something like YouTube, view it as a library of your content. So you can organize content into playlists, as we've said already. You can mark up content and you can optimize it for search based on the keywords that you use in the tags and the descriptions, and even how you format your titles. And you can organize your YouTube channel as a kind of, as a nice friendly access point for all of your video. Clearly on a social media network, you don't get quite the same ability. People are typically streaming and moving through a stream of content, and you'll just be one of many. So it's not to say that there's anything wrong with social media and anything, it's about how we arrange our strategy and how we're going to organize the content on all of these platforms, on whichever platform is important to us. We can also obviously we can organize our content in conjunction with online events. So what this means is we can stream, just like we're doing here. We can stream to a platform like YouTube, and you can stream to the social networks. If you do stream to a platform like YouTube, you can actually organize an event around that specific live stream and promote that event in advance of the live stream. You can also do this now on Facebook and to a certain extent with LinkedIn. So why have a launch plan? Well, look at how much effort you've put in to create your video. If you've been through the process of creating a strategy, creating a plan for a video or a series of videos, and then you've produced the content and then you've edited the content, if you've been through all of that work, why not take the extra steps of launching the content in a manner that's going to make sure you maximize that reach and awareness. So 5 key steps to launch plan. First of all, let's talk about thumbnails. So this is the static image that you'll very often see on a platform like YouTube, but you also see it now on LinkedIn and to a certain extent on Facebook as well. So you can attach a thumbnail that's essentially a call to action to ask people to engage with your video, click through and engage with that video. So if we get our thumbnail correct, we can significantly increase the number of viewers and therefore engagement with our video. Now, what I mean by this is if we talk about a platform like YouTube, a typical click-through rate might be something like 2%. This means if 100 people see your YouTube video in a stream on their YouTube screen, then 2% of 100 is 2 people. So it means 2 people will actually click through on your video. If they've run a search and they're seeing lots of other videos, there's clearly lots of other options for them to go for. They're not able to click on every single video. So that's a click-through rate of 2%. Now, plenty of studies have shown that if you can create the right thumbnail, a thumbnail that stands out, but also a thumbnail that incorporates the right design elements, and it might be text or it might be something visual that gives the viewer some sort of realistic clue about what's going to be in that video, then you're able to convey that message to the right viewer, and you can significantly increase your click-through rate. So a good click-through rate, a very good click-through rate is something like 6% or even higher. And clearly, if you've got a click-through rate of 6% and you've got 100 people watching it, that's 6 instead of 2. So that's 3 times or 300% more viewers just because you got your thumbnail right. So clearly, if you're going to invest in a video and you have that video working for you for days, weeks, months, or years, then having the right thumbnail can make a huge difference to the eventual number of views that video gets. You can also create some consistency around your branding. So if you've got a number of related thumbnails that you're going to use against a number of related videos, it creates that brand affinity and an element of consistency in the viewers, which will also increase the click-through rates you'll get from those particular viewers. We spoke about length of video before. Now, the interesting thing here is if your thumbnail can give it some form of indication to length of video, that might be a good thing. So it might seem counterintuitive. You might think, oh, I don't want to put people off who just want to watch a short video. If I've got a video that's going to last 20 minutes or more, why would I want to imply that in my thumbnail? Well, the reason you might want to is that for a platform like YouTube, if a viewer comes onto your content and only watches 5% of your video, so a few seconds of a 20-minute video, and drops off, that's quite a negative sign for YouTube. And so what we actually want is the users who are comfortable about watching a 20-minute workshop video. So getting thumbnails to convey the reality of what's going on in the video is actually a big part of what you're trying to do here. But most of all, we're just trying to compel viewers to click through and engage with our content. So the title and description is important, because obviously people are going to get a view of the thumbnail in conjunction with the title and potentially some elements of the description. So really all 3 of these things need to work together. On something like social media, if we put in a title and description, what we're really trying to do is engage in conversation. So it's the clues in the word, social media, so it's about being social. And so the best type of content typically is going to be content that's going to generate a conversation. And so if we can help that to happen by potentially making our title the title itself can be posing a question of some kind, then we're more likely to encourage engagement with that video and engagement with our content in general. So you can consider tags and call to actions as well. These things can often increase engagement. So step 3 is leverage the video in your website and or in your events. So once you've created video and you've got it set up and ready, and you've got it formatted, ready, you've got the right thumbnail, you've got the right title, you've got the right description for the right channel, then we can also repurpose that content and put it in something like an event. So you can set up events on LinkedIn, you can set up events in Facebook, you can set up events in third-party channels like Eventbrite. And if it's relevant for the sort of content you're creating, you might be able to create an event that's circling around your video content, and that will obviously increase the reach and awareness of your content. Embedding video onto your website, onto something like the blog area of a website, makes a lot of sense. If you embed the video onto your website, it has 2 effects. First of all, it will increase the weight and the power of that particular page on your website, and therefore it will increase the power of your website. But also, you'll give viewers to your website access to watch the video version of the content. So what you'll find lots of marketers doing is they've traditionally, for the last decade or decades, they've been creating lots and lots of blog articles, serving their audiences. They're now repurposing that content into a video format and then embedding the video version into their blog articles, and that's pretty successful. But then think creatively about other ways that we can leverage that content. Can we include it in our email campaigns? Maybe we can. So certainly with the social media networks, but with YouTube as well, motivating early engagement, it sends a signal to the algorithm that the content is relevant and it's interesting because people are jumping on it in numbers, but also they're jumping on it quite quickly. So having a launch plan that promotes your content quite quickly after it's up is definitely a very, very good idea. If we're on something like a social media network, then trying to generate a conversation around your content, potentially with your colleagues, for example, would be a good idea. If we've got email campaigns or email blasts that we can send out soon after we've launched our content, then that's going to help as well. But in general, the algorithms will reward early engagement, and it will work for you. So, as always, we want to review our analytics, and what we're trying to do here is trying to understand what elements make a video do well and what elements make a video do badly. And there can be a wide, and it could be quite subjective, really, what's good and what's bad about a video. But if we can take the analytics and first of all look at a good video and then look at a bad video from an analytics perspective, what we're looking for is commonalities in those bad videos, or in those good videos. So it might be to do with the content, it might be to do with the format, it might be to do with the structure of the content or the format of the content or the quality of the content, but also it might be to do with things like what time of day was it posted, what type of engagement did I get in the first few hours or days of that video, or not. So it can be quite challenging, this, but what we're looking for is to find out what works and then do more of it, what doesn't work and then cut it out of our process. And eventually, and as in with many things in digital marketing, there's a lot of experimentation and time is needed. Eventually, you'll be able to pull together a process that works for you and for your audience. So, repurposing. And we touched on this earlier, but in general, for me, if we're creating content for audiences, we are going to be thinking about at least 3 channels. Very broadly speaking, if we're a B2C company, we're probably going to be using Facebook, we're probably going to be using Instagram, we might be using something like Snapchat, or TikTok, possibly. If we're going to use one or more of those channels, for me, we may as well repurpose our content and place it on something like YouTube. And the reason I say that is YouTube is owned by Google. YouTube is very often quoted as being the second largest search engine in the world. If we've got video content and our primary platform is something like Facebook or Instagram, for example, it makes sense to put it on YouTube anyway, just because we might be able to pick up some of our audience might be on Google search or on YouTube, and we can pick up that audience. Moreover, from something like YouTube, you can embed it quite easily into a blog site or into websites. So for me, repurposing content from those B2C social media platforms, Facebook and Instagram, onto YouTube, makes sense. Similarly, if we're a B2B business, we're probably looking at a platform like LinkedIn. We're possibly looking at a platform like Twitter. If we are looking at those platforms where our audience is, then similarly, it makes sense for us to repurpose our content and place it on YouTube. Now, the fact of the matter is that most business YouTube channels and individual YouTube channels have almost no following whatsoever. Don't worry about it. It doesn't matter. Place your content on the YouTube channel, mark it up for search. It may eventually rank for search and start bringing hundreds or thousands or even tens of thousands of views. And if you embed, but more importantly, if you embed that video content into relevant areas on your website, then you're going to give a lot of power to your website. You're going to improve the performance of that page. And again, if you're consistent with it, you'll find that there's value in repurposing your video that's primarily made for LinkedIn and Twitter onto YouTube and then embedding it within your site. Of course, if you do have a strong YouTube channel, and YouTube's your primary channel, place it on that channel, mark it up in the way that you think is best for your audience, but also consider repurposing it for some of those other social media channels. So let's summarize what we've looked at then. So we looked at the platforms and how to use the platforms, and the key message really is knowing which is our primary platform and what format is going to work for that platform. Then we looked at the 5 steps to launching successfully launching a marketing video, and then we've spoken about some other key things to remember. And so thank you very much for being a wonderful audience, and I look forward to seeing you again soon in another video. Take care. Bye bye.